Since 2010, UK house prices have more than doubled, rising faster than almost any other major economy in Europe. Even through recessions, pandemics, and political chaos, prices seemed unstoppable. But in 2026, something historic is unfolding. Interest rates are the highest they've been in 20 years. Inflation still bites into every paycheck. And the dream of homeownership? For millions, it's slipping further away. Yet, what if this collapse is actually the greatest reset of our generation? Before we go deeper, if you're serious about changing your financial life, stay with me till the end. Because what's happening in the UK housing market right now could define your next 10 years, whether you rent, buy, or invest. Let's begin. House price to earnings ratio, a dangerous gap. Let's start with one of the biggest warning lights on the financial dashboard, the house price to earnings ratio. In simple terms, it measures how many times the average home costs compared to the average annual salary. Back in 1990, when the UK last saw a serious housing crash, homes were around 4 times the average income. In 2007, before the global financial meltdown, around 6 times. Today in 2026, the national average has exploded to 8.2 times earnings. In London, that number jumps to an unbelievable 11.7 times. Meanwhile, in the Northeast, it's closer to 4.8 times. Still high, but less insane. This widening gap tells one story. The UK housing market is massively overvalued, and history shows us that when affordability breaks, correction follows. Always. Affordability is crumbling fast now. Ratios alone don't crash markets. Affordability does. For years, record low interest rates created the illusion that people could afford sky-high house prices. When rates were 1.5%, buyers stretched their budgets, and banks happily played along. But now, with the Bank of England base rate hovering near 5.75%, the average mortgage payment as a share of take-home pay has shot up from 28% to nearly 46%. That's the highest burden since 1990, a level most households simply cannot sustain. Let's make this real. If you bought a £300,000 home in 2021 with a 2% mortgage, you'd pay about £1,270 per month. At 6%, that same mortgage costs £1,930, a £660 jump every month. That's not a minor change. That's the difference between security and foreclosure. And with over 1 million fixed-rate deals expiring this year, the real pain hasn't even begun. The 2026 economy, a perfect storm. So what will decide how deep this correction goes? The answer lies in the state of the wider economy. Let's look ahead. Inflation may have cooled from its 2022 highs, but prices haven't fallen. They've stayed high. Real wages are only now catching up, and growth remains anemic. According to the Resolution Foundation, the UK's cost of living crisis is far from over. By mid-2026, the average household is still spending £3,000 more per year on essentials compared to pre-pandemic levels. Meanwhile, energy costs remain unpredictable, and government austerity 2.0, spending cuts and higher taxes, are quietly tightening the economy. That's not the recipe for a housing boom. It's the setup for a correction that could reshape the country's wealth map. Why the rich are quietly selling. Here's what's interesting. The biggest early movers in this downturn aren't first-time buyers, they're investors. For the last decade, buy-to-let landlords have dominated the market, riding the wave of cheap money and rising prices. But now that profits are shrinking and borrowing costs are rising, many are cashing out. Fast. In fact, since late 2025, there's been a surge in landlords listing properties to lock in gains before values fall further. And this shift matters, because investor panic can accelerate downturns dramatically. They don't sell based on emotion, they sell based on numbers, and the numbers no longer make sense. The myth of limited supply. But wait, some say, house prices can't fall. There's too much demand and not enough supply. True, in the long term, but markets don't run on long-term theories. They run on short-term pressure. High interest rates overpower supply issues in the short run. When buyers can't afford loans, prices must drop, no matter how few houses exist. Even developers are cutting back. Many large UK construction firms have paused new projects due to falling demand and rising material costs. That means fewer new builds in 2027 to 2028. But right now, that's not enough to stop the slide. What happens when house prices fall? So what happens if UK house prices drop by 15%, 20%, or even 30%? Economist Edward Leamer once said, "Housing is the business cycle." He's right. When home values rise, people feel rich. They spend more. When prices fall, confidence collapses, spending dries up, and recessions deepen. The UK economy, already fragile, could face a feedback loop. Falling prices, less spending, job losses, forced sales, deeper price drops. It's the same domino effect that triggered the 2008 crash, just dressed in 2026's digital disguise. The new reality, a generation redefines success. But here's the twist most analysts miss. This isn't just a market event, it's a cultural reset. Young people who once felt locked out of the housing ladder are now rethinking what success means. More are prioritizing mobility, shared ownership, and digital income streams over traditional mortgages. A shift is coming, from owning walls to owning freedom, and those who adapt early will thrive. If you can position yourself now, learning, saving, investing smartly, the next few years could be the biggest wealth opportunity of your life. Because history shows every crash creates winners and losers. The difference? Timing and mindset. The outlook for 2026 to 2027. So how far could UK house prices really fall? Most economists now predict a 15 to 20% decline over the next 18 months. But if interest rates stay elevated longer, or unemployment rises sharply, a 25 to 30% correction isn't impossible. Still, this doesn't mean doom. In fact, it might finally restore balance to a broken system. For first-time buyers who've been priced out for years, the coming correction could be the window they've been praying for. If you prepare, stay liquid, and wait for the right moment, the housing crash of 2026 might just become your opportunity of the decade. The real lesson. Every generation faces its own storm. For our parents, it was the 15% interest rates of 1990. For us, it's the inflation and stagnation of 2026. But the principle is timeless. Markets don't reward fear. They reward preparation. So whether you rent, buy, or invest, understand the cycle, don't chase it. Be patient when others panic. And remember, housing crashes don't destroy wealth. They transfer it. The question is, to whom? The UK housing market is entering a new era, one defined not by endless growth, but by painful readjustment. For some, that's terrifying. For others, it's liberation. If you've ever felt like the system was rigged, this might be your moment to break free, learn, and rebuild smarter. So don't just watch the headlines. Study them. Position yourself, because every collapse plants the seeds of the next rise. If you've made it this far, you're already ahead of 99% of people. That means you care about your future, not just the noise. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay with me as we dive deeper into how to turn crisis into opportunity in 2026 and beyond. Because the truth is simple. The housing market may be crashing, but your potential doesn't have to.